The Dave Hooker Show.
A presentation of Off the Hook Sports.
Objective insight, expertise, top guests. Available on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the Off the Hook Sports app.
Download now for free.
Also available on offthehooksports.com.
I compute and obey.
Now to Dave Hooker.
Ready.
You want a show? We got a show. Tennessee's opening line against Virginia is out. How favored are the Vols? And what do we think about Virginia? Also, Josh Ward will join us from the Sports Animal. Which fan base is in the best position right now regarding all sports, with the greatest emphasis, of course, on football? Is it Georgia? Is it perhaps LSU? Because they've got a pretty good women's basketball team. Is it Alabama? Because they've got a pretty good basketball team when they don't have firearms. So we'll get to that. Also, Joe Milton, a little bit more swag than Hendon Hooker I want to get into today. And Tennessee is behind more than half of the SEC schools in states with better recruiting per 247 Sports. Also, the ACC approves merit-based revenue sharing. What does that mean? Well, that means that right now, every SEC school gets the same amount of cash. If you made it merit-based, that's bad news for Vanderbilt. Caleb Calhoun, how are you, sir?
Oh, I'm doing very, very well. It's so pretty today outside. What about you, Dave?
I'm fantastic. I got the gym out of the way, so I'm good to go. Probably a little after effect from the pre-workout drink as well. So let's get it rolling right now. Caleb is the biggest gambler in the history of man. I will go ahead and say that. It's basically Caleb, and then a slight drop down. It is Pete Rose. So here we go. Caleb wants to lead the show.
I bet on how many hits our show gets per day, guys. So
we got an over/under daily at 11,500. That's where we are. Tennessee, a 27-point favorite versus Virginia. That's according to DraftKings. And by the way, we'll have a big announcement of a partnership that we're going to have with a gambling website we're looking forward to. So this might be the last time you ever hear the word DraftKings on the show, but you're hearing it now. 27-point favorite against Virginia. What do you make of the opening line?
What I make of it, quite honestly, right now is stay as far away from it as possible if you're a Tennessee fan, because last year, this team last year would have easily covered that. Virginia's the type of team where they're going to drop 40, 50, and they may allow 20. But either way, yeah, they would have easily covered this last year. This year, we've talked about how we don't know what to expect from Joe Milton. We don't know how the offense is going to change. Dave, you and I both talked about how they might do a little more ball control because of the running game and because of the questions about Joe Milton's accuracy, and also because Josh Heupel might just feel like he needs to have a few more time-consuming drives. So you factor all those things in together, even though I think Tennessee is significantly better than Virginia, I stay away from this line. And if done to my head, I take Virginia to cover a 27-point spread.
I would stay away from most opening lines because every team is different. And I addressed this with somebody on the YouTube channel that that South Carolina team that you think the Tennessee is going to beat just beat them by a bajillion points. Well, I mean, that's true, but every team's different. Chemistry is different. And I'm just using that as a point. I don't want to get off on a South Carolina tangent, for goodness sake. But every team is different. So I don't know that this team will have its strongest attribute, which was belief. And it was snap and clear mentality. That started with Butch Jones, but that is really how this team played last year. That's the first I heard the saying. They didn't get obsessed with a great play. They didn't get down over a bad play. I don't know that mentality is going to be there. So I stay away from opening games in general. But as far as Virginia, they're hoping that a Monmouth transfer, his name's Tony Muskett, comes in, and he's the starting quarterback, and there's no set announcement on that yet, but they have a bigger question at quarterback than Tennessee. So I'll go flip side. If you made me gamble, and I don't for a good reason, because I enjoy the pools and the parties in Vegas, not the gambling, and the gambling builds all that. If you made me bet on this, I would actually take Tennessee to cover and cover pretty easily. I also think that Tennessee is going to want to make a statement with Joe Milton. Not that they're going to be even more aggressive than they are, but I think there's an opportunity to do that against this Virginia team. So I would go the opposite, but I would agree with you. I would stay away from most opening numbers. I would stay away from this number as well.
Yeah, I agreed about most opening numbers. Some I actually am a little more convinced of. It just kind of depends because there's just teams that I'm higher on to start the year that I'm lower on that not everybody else is. And so, for instance, I do believe the LSU Florida State line is out right now, and I don't care what that line is. I'm putting it all on LSU. I'm going all in on LSU to cover. I don't care what they set the line at. Honestly,
I could see that because the line with Florida State's pub is going to be slanted towards Florida State by a couple, 3-4 points. I think that's going to be the case. I do like that point. I usually don't like opening games, so I love that.
Yeah. And I see it now. Yeah, LSU's favored by 2. Man, put a bunch of money on. Guys, get rich now. Put a bunch of money on LSU to cover that 2-point spread on opening weekend. But, yeah, with two teams with Tennessee and Virginia, both have new quarterbacks. It's so hard to know what to expect. My gambling advice is don't touch that line. But yeah, Dave and I are on opposite sides. I just think the ball control that Heupel's going to try to implement and experiment with is going to slow them down a lot in the opener.
Well, but that would be good news long term because it means your defense isn't as tired and isn't as subject to being fatigued or injured later in the season. Getting back to Virginia, they've got a deep running back group. I think they'll be pretty good there. Receiver is going to be a big issue for them because of losses from last year. And the secondary has to replace some monstrous holes, 2 all-ACC cornerbacks in Anthony Johnson and Fentrell Cypress II. Given that, have I talked you any more into perhaps Tennessee covering that they have secondary issues and might struggle to score with a Monmouth quarterback and a group of receivers that haven't proven anything at the college level?
No, because what the secondary issues mean is the receivers are going to be bare and wide open, which I thought they were going to be anyway, because that's how this offense runs. Now, the question was always, when they are wide open, is Joe Milton going to be able to hit them? And so we'll have to see how that goes. I would say theoretically, yes, if it's Squirrel White, because again, Squirrel White's the one receiver you can overthrow by 20 yards and he'll still catch it. But I don't know about the rest of them.
True. And this tells you how different right now Tennessee's football program is than Virginia. So who is the running back that everybody talked about for Tennessee in spring camp? It's a big, strong guy named Cam Selden, right? Okay. The guy they're talking about in Virginia is the preferred walk-on, and his name, you might remember, his last name is Greasy. He is the grandson of Bob Greasy. So that's a classic Kirsten Biggers. He's not really going to play, but that just tells you how different the programs are. You've got a guy that could come in and be a superstar at Tennessee, and then you got Jack Greasy for Virginia, and I would be very surprised if he has a major impact this fall. And that just gives you an idea. It is not to the level of Austin Peay, but it's more in that ballpark than you might think. Virginia's just not very good.
Yeah, I don't know why. Honestly, thinking of Tony Elliott, I like Tony Elliott. I don't know why he took that job. I'm one of those believers that if you're an offensive coordinator at a school like Clemson, you do what Kirby Smart did, don't you, Dave? You wait for the right job where you can get it. That's a really good job. Because an offer is going to come from somewhere better at some point.
Caleb's a big gambler. Let's get to that right now. You got a couple more lines now. I'll tell you if I agree. You've got Florida, Texas A&M, Alabama, and Georgia are out. So what do we got? And I'll tell you if I agree who you take.
All right, so early, Tennessee is a 7.5-point favorite over Florida.
Oh, you mean I'm sorry. I thought you meant the opening Okay, so Tennessee.
Yeah, I was. Yeah, do you
Oh
want me to
no,
read
I
the
like
openers
this
for the
better.
teams?
No, I like this better. I misunderstood you in the 4:15 production meeting we had this morning. Okay, so Tennessee is a what spread over Florida?
7.5.
That's crazy.
No, I wouldn't take that.
You take Florida on the spread. All right.
Yeah.
I'm taking Tennessee. I'm taking Tennessee on the spread. I think they're going to do it.
That's
I think they're going to do it.
All right, what else? A&M, Texas A&M.
Oh, wait, before A&M, I missed one. South Carolina's out. They are a 13-point favorite over South Carolina.
Hey now.
I'm taking Tennessee in the 13.
I'm with you. I'm taking Tennessee in the 13. Okay, so Texas A&M, they are 8.5.
Beating Texas A&M by 8.5. Who does Tennessee have the week before? Caleb, can you remind me of that? Because you and I see this game.
Don't they have South Carolina the week before?
Yeah, so you and I see the A&M game a little bit differently. I tend to think that'll be closer. I think after an emotional game the week before. So what do you say about A&M and the spread there?
I think they fall out of bed and cover it. Come at me.
That's crazy.
All right, Tracy Morgan. All right, I've got Tennessee winning, but they'll cover. All right, Alabama, spread on that. By the way, hit that like and subscribe button if you haven't already. We greatly appreciate it. And the message board saying, I'm taking them all. Rocky Top Tom, though, says 7.5 over Florida in the swamp. He said,
That's crazy.
yes. All right, Caleb, what else we got?
All right, so here we go. Tennessee, Alabama. I might make some money off this now. Alabama's a 9.5-point favorite. I got Tennessee again.
Hey now.
I think Tennessee keeps it close. I think Tennessee keeps it close. And I think that a lot of these numbers will change drastically, and our opinions may change drastically after we see what Joe Milton brings to the table. But as of right now, if that game was tomorrow, I would take that. All right, so what else you got?
Before we get there, I would also just like to add for people questioning. In 2021, when Tennessee was a much worse program, they were within one score of Alabama in the fourth quarter at Alabama. That's the last time they were there. The time before that, 2019, that would have been a one-score game had Jared Garantano not made that really epic, stupid decision to force the quarterback sneak and fumble, and then they returned it the other way for a touchdown. But anyway.
Yeah, jackass.
Right,
so the last one, and this is probably the most difficult one for me. Georgia is an 8-point favorite over the Vols.
All right, people are going to get mad at me. I'm going to take Georgia to cover. I don't think Tennessee's at that level yet with the War Daddies, the big guys. So you can get mad at me if you want, but at this point, things might change. I want to see Carson Beck, but I would take Tennessee at this point. I would take Georgia to not only win, but cover. Sorry, Mr. Jones.
I'm going to take
Tennessee. And the message board tells me.
Why don't you shut the hell up?
All right, Caleb.
I'm sounding like the homer. I'm going to take Tennessee again because I think everybody's thinking. I think everybody's thinking Georgia's going to be all in on the Tennessee game, and so they're obviously not going to overlook it. Here's the flaw in that: it's late in the season, Dave. When you play a really easy schedule like Georgia does, you know as well as I do, you start to let a lot of mistakes become a habit because you get away with it.
Yep, you do.
Just saying.
Yeah, you do, and I think that this Georgia team. It would surprise me if that they were complacent throughout the year like they were last year, wouldn't it? You don't have 2 years of those, do you? I mean, Alabama was like that a couple of years, and they ended up playing for a national title. And I just don't think, unless Kirby Smart's lost complete discipline, which is a possibility, you can rag him in the
right now.
Yeah, I mean, it's a real possibility. But surely this team comes to play every Saturday because they certainly didn't last year. All right, Jacob Warren, what should people do?
What's up, everybody? This is Jacob Warren asking you to like, subscribe, and share. Dave needs this.
He does. Tennessee left outside of the top 5 in future offensive power rankings. This, to me, needs some explanation. And until I get that, it's going to get a big, what the H? Brought to you by AndyMasonRealEstate.com.
What the? What was he thinking?
Release the hounds.
The Dave Hooker Show.
Keep cool.
A presentation of OffTheHookSports.com.
AndyMasonRealEstate.com. Go there if you're thinking of selling or buying a home. Best prices, best service in the biz. It's just that simple. It's phenomenal. AndyMasonRealEstate.com. I wouldn't trust anybody else. My home, AndyMasonRealEstate.com. Over 40 years of experience in his office. So how's Tennessee left outside of the top 5 in the future offensive power rankings? What the H in honor of the late Norm Macdonald?
Yes, and for those who don't, this is by Adam Rittenberg of ESPN. And for those who don't realize, future
Huge
offensive
Big Ten
power,
guy. Huge Big Ten guy. Worked with him.
yeah, and future offensive power rankings go for 2023, 2024, and 2025. So even if you have questions about Joe Milton, how do you ignore Nico being on the team for 2024 and 2025? But
yeah, Joe Milton could essentially dump the bed, and Nico could come in, and I think Tennessee is going to be good for the next couple of years. If Joe Milton doesn't work out, which I think he will, but you got Nico. All right, so I don't get this. Tell me why this makes sense. Do I need to call Adam Rittenberg and have him on the program?
yeah, this doesn't make any sense. I will give him 2 teams, the top 2. So number 1, and by the way, I'm not saying it's clear these are better than Tennessee. I'm saying these aren't egregious. Number 1 for him is USC. Okay, Lincoln Riley runs a similar offense to Josh Heupel. He runs it out west. Fine. Ohio State, number 2. Fair enough. Tested and true offensive system. Whatever we think of Ryan Day, that offense has been that offense for a long time. Here's where your heads are going to explode. Number 3, Georgia. Even if you think Georgia's the better team than Tennessee, the better offense than Tennessee for the next 3 years?
No, I don't even think they want to be the better offense.
Yeah.
In some sense. I think they want a ball control, which isn't statistically the better offense, which I believe would be what Adam Rittenberg is referring to.
Probably. But Dave, for the next 2, we need Tracy Morgan on blast. We need him maximized.
Oh, he's ready.
4th, Alabama.
That's crazy.
All right. Why in the world would Alabama be 4th ahead of Tennessee?
According to Rittenberg, Alabama's offense has become a mainstay near the top as Saban embraced a philosophy around quarterback play and piling up points. He clearly hasn't done his research on the new offensive coordinator they just brought in. So that's insane. It makes no sense. And like you said with Georgia, I don't even think Saban wants Alabama to be ahead of Tennessee offensively. And so this is just insane. But number 5 is like Tracy Morgan magnified, because number 5 is the worst of all of them. Michigan is ahead of Tennessee. Michigan.
That's crazy.
Michigan's, I mean, you can like that type of offense more if you want, which is an offense that's more about ball control. I kind of like those type of offenses more, to be real honest with you, to keep your defense fresh. But at the end of the day, if this is based off production, I don't see how Michigan compares to Tennessee at this point. I don't.
Yeah. They don't at all. They don't at all. And like people, I guess they're looking at like points per drive or per possession or something like that. But I still think Tennessee was pretty high on that last year. I mean, I could be wrong on that, but I'm pretty sure that even if you factored that in, they were still near the top.
Now, a great point brought up by Rocky Top Tom here. It's because Darnell Wright is gone, Dave. Our offensive line has a lot to prove. Now, Darnell Wright, I'm more of an offensive line guy than anything else. I think that's where games are won and lost. I hate that phrase, but it's true. Up front on both sides.
Old school SEC guy, Dave.
Yeah, but I am a Darnell
SEC football in the 80s.
But I tell who was the first to tell everybody that Darnell Wright was the best player on the football team? I told you that in August. Okay, so I'm not in any shape, form, or fashion trying to say that they just move on and everything's fine without him. But I do happen to think this year they have enough talent where they'll be just fine. My concern is what they lose for 2024 on the offensive line. But I think Tennessee's offensive line will actually be good this year. I'm not going to say better than last year because you don't lose a Darnell Wright and get better. But as a whole, I don't think they take a major hit. Now, I think they're a little thin on the interior. I don't think you want to lose a guard or Cooper, especially to injury. But I think Tennessee's offensive line will actually be a strength, Rocky Top Tom. I really do.
And also, even if it's a question this year, do we really think it'll be a question 3 years running? I mean, this Josh Heupel offense is tested and proven at 2 other stops.
Well,
So-
no, I do have a question. I mean, I do have a question long term. I have a question in 2024, 2025. I think he needs more of this big cats to come in. So, yes, I have a question after this season, and maybe transfers and maybe guys develop. But, yes, I think there's concern about not having enough big guys. And that's not just me saying that. That's from some people within the program that's where they need to beef it up. And I think everybody said that publicly. I don't think that's any declaration of anything unknown, right? I mean, I don't see that. Go ahead.
He hasn't filled out a recruiting class or filled out a transfer class yet since Darnell Wright went in the top 10. And I bring that up because I'm pretty sure a lot of elite right tackles in the portal and in high school are looking at that right now and really seriously considering Tennessee. And you got to think, before that, I'm sure a lot of these guys felt that Tennessee was not a destination for offensive linemen to be able to thrive. But when Darnell Wright goes in the first round, when Cade Mays was drafted the year before, and Jerome Carvin inks a deal with the team as an undrafted free agent, I think you're starting to see offensive line realizing they could easily go to Tennessee and develop to NFL prospects.
Yeah, I like Campbell and Mincy at tackles. Okay. I like Carrick at an interior position at guard a lot. I like Spraggins a little more than okay, but not a lot. And I think we all know that Cooper Mays is an all SEC top center. So I don't think their offensive line's an issue this year at all. I really don't. Even without Wright. But I think that in 2024 and 2025, as someone told me, that's where it gets dicey. And that was the exact term they used. And I think it does get a little bit dicey if they can't continue to hit on transfers, in particular at the offensive line position, or they can't develop guys or go get the big guys. I mean, they haven't gone out and got a Cade Mays, for instance. You know, that type of 5-star guy coming out of school, a high school, that is ready to play. They haven't got that cat yet. And you need 2 or 3 of those cats pretty much every recruiting class, because the old saying that I had was it's 50-50. You look at a recruiting class, 50% of the guys will be contributors or stars, 50% will be washed up and gone from the program. So you really need to hit on 2 elite offensive linemen a year at the very least, and supplement them with some 3-star guys as well. But I don't see that yet. Maybe that happens, but right now it seems like they're having more success at other positions.
But the great Derek Dooley determined that you don't need an offensive line. You can go a full class without an offensive line.
I will tell you this. And that reminds me, when he said that a running back makes a great offensive line more than a great offensive line makes a running back, I was so close, because I was considering a career move at the time. Anyway, I almost put my pen and pad down and walked out of the room. It was the most absurd thing, that a running back makes an offensive line more than an offensive line makes a running back.
That was his first spring practice. I will never forget that. And then I remember his exact example was LaDainian Tomlinson has made yards no matter who he's run behind. I'm like, well, he's been running behind a great line for like 10 years. So,
and you don't have a LaDainian Tomlinson. I mean, Barry Sanders did a pretty good job at that, but do you have a Barry Sanders? I think not. 2 minutes. Josh Ward will join us. We love him. Which fan base is loving life right now? We rank them based on all sports, but probably weigh football pretty heavy. Stay tuned. Off the Hook Sports, 2 minutes.
Family has been creating jewelry since 1986. Each piece unique, with a story all its own. I'm Rick Terry with Rick Terry Jewelry Designs. I'm a jeweler, and I want to be your jeweler. We're grateful that you chose us to be Knoxville's best jeweler. My family and staff look forward to serving you. So please come see us. Kingston Pike and Campbell Station Road in the heart of Farragut, and downtown on Gay Street, right next to the Tennessee Theater.
Hi, Mike Davis here with City Heating and Air, reminding you to always dare to compare. Our team provides quality local heating and air service, installation, and maintenance across East Tennessee. We use only the best equipment like American Standard heating and air conditioning for your residential, new construction, or commercial needs. Honesty, dependability, and customer satisfaction have been the cornerstones of our business since 1961. City Heat and Air.
With all that sun, sand, and salt water, the beach is a very relaxing place. Unless you wear contacts. Ow! Open your eyes to the best the beach has to offer with LASIK vision correction from Campbell Cunningham Laser Center.
Do you want to own the more that owns every job? Then get to Vassey Lawn and Garden in Cleveland and get you a Toro. I'm David Vassey, here to talk to you about Toro. With a Toro Zero Turn, you'll get more out of every minute and you'll reach the finish line faster. At Vassey's, we like to say, no matter if you're mowing 3 acres a week or 11 lawns a day, homeowners and business owners alike find confidence in equipment they can trust from top to bottom.
Vassey Lawn and Garden, Highway 60 North in Cleveland.
Man alive, it's worth the drive.
These mountains hold and defend a spirit far better than moonshine. A drink that holds flavor that becomes necessity. A hard cider made and relished by folk who are as hearty as they are legend. A refreshment that can only be found in one place. With a taste that makes you say, give me 3 bottles of the good stuff. Tennessee Cider Company, where necessity can be found.
Welcome back to the program. As I think I've got my button thing froze. Don't you love that? Technical issues never happens. Here we go.
Objective coverage.
Hey, that's new.
If we get caught, we're going to jail.
The Dave Hooker Show, a presentation of Off the Hook Sports. YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the free Off the Hook Sports app.
I'm going to need to see some identification.
Back to Dave Hooker.
I remember my first day in broadcasting. Josh Ward joins us now of the Sports Animal. You can listen to him from noon to 3. You can read his great stuff on Off the Hook Sports, that's the name of it, offthehooksports.com. It's been one of those mornings. Josh, I don't know. What's the name of a dad blame site? Got any idea?
You remember your first day in broadcasting, but not the URL to your own website. It's okay.
Well, I was telling Caleb I got up early this morning for the workout and maybe too much pre-workout stuff. That's not good for me, but I love it. Should I continue? Here it is.
Yeah, I like a good glass of water before
I
my
thought he was going to
workout.
say steroids, but you know.
That's what I go with.
It's being considered. He's testosterone replacement. We'll see. It depends if they decide to be an advertiser. All right, Josh. So I wanted to will Dave inject testosterone into his body for a new advertiser? Probably. All right, Josh. So let's get to the top fan bases right now. Who's loving life? You wrote a column on that. It is on offthehooksports.com, and it's hard to deny Georgia, right? I mean, we always want to do something provocative in the offseason, but it's Georgia. They've won 2 national titles.
Yeah, it's Georgia. All sports matter, but none matter nearly as much as football. Basketball is great. Basketball creates a lot of excitement. An exception there could be made for if you're having the conversation in Lexington, Kentucky, but Kentucky's not having the type of success they expect in basketball right now. So with what Georgia is doing in football, and it's really not close in terms of their results compared to everybody else, as good as Alabama has been the last couple of years, Georgia has still been head and shoulders above Alabama in terms of results. The one loss Georgia has over the last 2 seasons is to Alabama. But if you look at all of the programs, Ohio State, Michigan, LSU, USC, and we'll see if things change. But with what they're doing right now, as impressive as it is, they would trade places in a heartbeat with Georgia, and so would every fan base. So like Tennessee is on the list of fan bases who are in a really good position, and things have changed greatly. But they would trade everything for what Georgia has with the back-to-back national titles.
So what fan base would you most want to be a part of right now, based off a little bit of everything, but surely football, as Josh pointed out, is the lead dog in that. So taking all sports into account, who was number 2 on your list?
Still Alabama. When we talk about Alabama dropping off, we're talking about Alabama dropping off. They are still above just about everybody in college football. And there is a question going into the season. New offensive coordinator again with a quarterback question heading into the season. Is Alabama vulnerable? Maybe the answer is yes, but I also know that Alabama has all kinds of talent and will be a national title contender again going in. And there are only so many fan bases that can really talk about that with confidence. Plus, at this point, Alabama has stockpiled so many wins and championships. There's so much to celebrate. So you have that. You have Alabama basketball, which needs to improve its image, but they're still at the top of the SEC on the court. And it's an athletic department that has a bunch of riches thanks to the football success. So while Alabama fans may be frustrated because it's been 2+ seasons since they won a national title, they've won a bunch of national titles, and they will have a chance to win another one this year.
Josh, would you like an update on my dog?
Not especially, but I'll take one if you would like to offer it.
He had 11 teeth removed. So he's struggling a little bit, but he was able to eat his Kraft Treats yesterday. So go to crafttreats.com, use the promo code Off the Hook with the CBD derivative. It can help with your dog's lost teeth, or it can also help with the anxiety that it may suffer in social situations or car rides. And also, how about arthritis, which he probably has that in his mouth from all the lost teeth. So go to crafttreats.com, use the promo code Off the Hook to get 20% off the hook. And Josh has young children. We could potentially do a test run there of Kraft Treats with their chill pills if you would like.
There's very little currently that separates Max from dogs. So yeah, he would happily test him out. I promise you.
Here's your CBD and Benadryl, son. Go to sleep.
Yep.
Have you? Is it? I'll admit I gave Benadryl to kids on a long road trip. Is that bad? Does that make me a bad parent?
Well, you're not alone, so there are a lot that are going to be on board with you. Our kids travel pretty well, knock on wood, because we'll be doing some traveling this summer. But we're also fortunate to be in a minivan DVD world, so we don't give them Benadryl, we give them Toy Story 2.
Nice. All right, go ahead. I won't tell the story about how on a family trip we got hit in the rear in North Atlanta by a drunken illegal immigrant, but that's fine. Go ahead, Caleb. It's a true story.
Josh, so what are any of these fan bases, has anything ever topped being a fan or a student at Florida from 2005 to 2008, where you got 2 national titles in basketball, 2 national titles in football? Although at the same time, was it worth being a fan and being on campus at the time when you know you might get stabbed by a player on the Florida Gators too? So
Yeah, I was going to offer as long as you didn't get assaulted during that time. You probably enjoyed, and some fans might have said, "Hey, that's cool as long as we're winning." So yeah, that was a great run because you have football and basketball at the top, and at the time, 2 of the best coaches in each sport, no doubt, in Urban Meyer and Billy Donovan. And Florida is not in that position right now, not even close. And that's why Florida fans are rightfully upset, because they've seen what their top programs are capable of. And right now, they're nowhere close to that. That can change. But Florida fans have, if we did an annual ranking of this, top 5 fan bases in the best spot, Florida would be at or near the top a lot of the time. But football now has waited for a long time to get back to the top, and basketball is still trying to find its way to where Billy Donovan had it. So mid-2000s, great time for Florida fans meeting the very high expectations. They're far away from that point right now.
Let's get back to the list for a second. So Georgia 1, Alabama 2, who's 3, and where does Tennessee fall? The best SEC fan bases to be a part of.
Yeah, so I have LSU number 3, just ahead of Tennessee. LSU has a football team that will be preseason top 10, and I think a legitimate national title contender. Not favorite, but contender going in. They have an athletic department. Well, so here's what I think most fans of programs that have legitimate national title potential want. Most fans want an athletic director and department that will go spend and will be aggressive in getting the people that are capable of getting the job done. And I don't think there's an athletic department that is more aggressive than LSU in that. LSU has said, we're going to go get a football coach that can win. And they went and got Brian Kelly. Now, they tried to get Tom Herman, didn't work out. They had to settle for Ed Orgeron. He got a title. So you don't always land exactly who you want. But even in that case, they got Ed Orgeron instead, They still won a national title. So the potential of the job is always so great, no matter who's in that position, because of the talent that you're going to have. So LSU fans almost always are in a position where they can expect a lot. And right now they can expect about as much as anybody. And then you can go through other sports as well. They go get Kim Mulkey, and she brings a national title in a couple of years to LSU in women's basketball. That again speaks to what LSU attempts to do. So if you're an LSU fan, you're having a lot of fun and you have a lot to look forward to. Being just ahead of Tennessee, Tennessee's behind LSU because they're still trying to get to that championship level in these sports, especially football and men's basketball. But they've been so good for quite a while now at basketball. Football is back. They just won the all sports trophy. So you do have these other sports that are succeeding. So if you're following other sports that don't get the same amount of attention, you're having a good time there. And if you grade on a curve, I could actually move Tennessee up considering how bad it's been. So right now is a really good time to be a Tennessee fan because you have legitimate leadership, both from the academic side, I believe, and then to the athletic department, because those go together with Danny White as athletic director, and then a football coach who you can trust running the program, I believe, in Josh Heupel, and then a bunch of good coaches elsewhere. Like Tennessee baseball is going to be an NCAA tournament team, and this season's a disappointment so far. That's how high the program has risen, and the softball team has a very good chance to get back to the World Series. That program has just been the standard for so long and is almost resetting it with 2 SEC titles this year.
I want to switch gears for a second and talk about some Joe Milton. First, Jacob Warren.
What's up, everybody? This is Jacob Warren asking you to like, subscribe, and share. Dave needs this.
Let me ask you, Josh, what did you think of Joe Milton and his demeanor as we kind of read into his mindset for the upcoming season? But he was on the Good Morning Football show, and he seemed very, very confident. What did you think of his demeanor? Because it's quite different than Hendon Hooker this time a year ago, who was much more reserved.
Yeah, Joe Milton does have Joe Cool to him. Looks the part, kind of carries himself that way. I think that he is more confident and more comfortable in the position as Tennessee starter compared to 2 years ago, partly thanks to Hendon, partly thanks to Tennessee's coaches who have helped Joe develop. He just has a better understanding of what's expected of him off the field, on the field as the quarterback. 2 years ago, he's trying to learn everything very quickly and play very quickly with the way Tennessee's offense ran, and it was just too much too soon. I think Joe's a lot he's clearly better based on what we've seen to this point, the way he played in the Orange Bowl. How much better will he be? How consistent will he be? We'll find out this fall. But Joe knows he has the talent, and now he knows that he understands more about playing the position and running Tennessee's offense. So with the natural confidence he has thanks to his athletic ability and his arm, to go along with his knowledge that he's developed over the last couple of years and his leadership skills that he's improved over the last 2 years, that's why he looks so comfortable.
Josh, Dave and I had a debate yesterday, and I wanted to get your thoughts on it.
I won.
I'm sorry?
I won.
I think I won. Do you think, and we've seen Tennessee we've seen Tennessee do this before. They did this with Eric Berry and the Hall Heisman stuff. They did it with Peyton Manning in 1997. But, sending Joe Milton to New York, going on Good Morning Football, like this is a guy who's lost his starting job twice. Do you think it's risky for them to be overexposing Joe Milton like this when we're still not sure that he could maintain a starting job for a year?
Well, to be clear, it's more Spire than Tennessee. So Spire sent Joe and Ramel Keaton up there, just like last year, Hendon Hooker and Cedric Tillman went because they were kind of the big pieces. Ramel's a senior on the football team now and has been a part of the program for 5 years. So, but from the perspective of Tennessee and him representing, look, he's the quarterback. I mean, he's the starter. So if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out either way. The Heisman odds have Joe as a person to pay attention to, not a leader. That's Caleb Williams going in at USC. So if it doesn't work out, they go to Nico, and then it's just his time. And then at that point, you really need it to work out with Nico pretty quickly because you don't have other options at that position. But if you're Tennessee, you're confident, you should be, that you have helped Joe improve at the position and that he's going to be ready to take the next step as a quarterback in this offense with everything that you're capable of doing. I also think the floor is still so high for what this offense can be that you don't have to be too worried about how it plays out. But like from a marketing standpoint, we were talking about this on my show on Wednesday. Is Joe Milton not the most marketable quarterback in the SEC? Part of that's because so many guys have moved on, but I think he probably is with the way he carries himself. All this excitement about how strong his arm is. He was in the, Barstool puts out a video of him in their offices up there throwing a football as hard as he can, 15 feet down the hallway. So he's just, there's something about him that is very exciting. He was on College Game Day on ESPN. That was a Tennessee thing. They put him out there. So he's very marketable. At some point, though, you do have to go back it up, and that's about 3 months from now.
Yeah, and Brew McCoy's a better player. Then they should have sent him instead of Ramel Keaton. That's my
I guess so. I think Brew's better. I agree with you. I don't know how much that matters, but Ramel's a guy that's been in the program for 5 years. So, they weren't marketing Ramel. I think it was more of a reward of what he's done. They could have taken Jabari Small. They could have taken a bunch of guys. So I don't think that's as big of a deal. But Ramel is a guy that I think is really respected. He's overlooked in this offense because Brew gets attention. There's excitement about Squirrel White with what he'll do entering year 2. There's excitement about what Dante Thornton could bring to the offense as a transfer from Oregon. And all of that is warranted. But Ramel Keaton stepped up last year when Tillman went down and made big plays for Tennessee in big games. And behind the scenes, I think is putting in a lot of work that we don't get to see, but they know about it. So I think that's part of the reason Ramel made that trip is because of the work that he's put in and how he's respected.
I agree. And Joe Milton has that respect too. At some point, Tennessee might have to be in that position, or Spire Group might be in that position, I should say, as you pointed out, that they might have to take a non-quarterback if they have a true battle and you don't want to kind of anoint one guy. I'm sure they get feedback from Josh Heupel about who they take to New York, right?
Maybe. I don't know if there's a seniority to it because it was 2 seniors last year, 2 seniors this year. And a lot of the trip was you go into New York, you get to be around businesses. They go to the New York Stock Exchange and get to check that out. Next year, Nico's the guy. I can say that with a good amount of confidence. Are you taking him up there?
More.
Yeah, but here's my bold prediction for 2024. They're projecting Nico to be the starter. But so I don't know if he's making that trip or is it 2 older guys that are making that trip. My guess is Nico, but I don't know that that's the case. So I'd like to see a defensive guy get some love. Aaron Beasley could have made that trip, or Amari Thomas could have made that trip. But I don't know what the budget is. Why can't they take more? This isn't media days. You can take more than 2. So they didn't ask me. It's not a big deal, but it is a good opportunity to have that kind of experience and that kind of exposure. I'll say that with a lot of confidence.
Yeah, to me, you bring up the SEC media days, and it should be, just for the record, Jacob Warren and Cooper Mays this year, and Joe Milton. Did they take 3? Did they take 3 last year, or was it 2, Josh?
I think it's
because they took Flowers, they took Tillman and Hooker, so they took 3.
Yeah, there you go.
All right, so take 3. It should be Cooper and Jacob, and then it should be Joe Milton. And I say that with maybe slight inclination that they.
Well, Jacob should definitely be there because anytime you have a chance to take a Farragut alum, you know that you'll be very well represented. This team has a number of guys, no joke, that would be good reps. I mentioned Aaron Beasley, Amari Thomas. They're leaders on the team. They've been leaders within the program in terms of the Vol Leaders campaign that they have. Cooper is definitely a great choice. Joe is an obvious choice. Ramel, again, could be that. So they have a bunch of veterans, guys that are stepping up into leadership roles that were left behind by guys that left after last year's team, which comes back to where the program is. So the more guys that you can legitimately talk about taking to media days, the more legitimacy your program actually has within the SEC.
Yeah, that New York trip, though, needs to be about hardcore business. Who's the most marketable?
Yeah, I agree with that. And that is what it's about. And by the way, Tennessee's had a few years where that's some tough pickings for media days because of where the roster and program was. That's not the case right now.
I think Tommy Townsend was a candidate before he transferred.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to name some guys, but there are some guys where they would end up on the list by the time that came out, and I was like, it's gonna be a tough week for Tennessee.
Yeah, I'll name one of them is Jeremy Pruitt. You wanting to go represent your school?
Oh, Jeremy Pruitt was better than Butch Jones the last year. Who remembers Butch Jones' last year at SEC Media Days?
Well, the best to me, I think the best coach remark at Media Days from Tennessee would be Derek Dooley, 2012, proclaiming the SEC doesn't have Tennessee to kick around anymore, and he made that proclamation about 3 to 4 months before Tennessee fired him because his team got kicked around again in the SEC.
Also, Tyler Braid guaranteed an SEC championship that year at SEC Media Days. I remember that. He said Tennessee would win the SEC title.
Who could throw a beer bottle further, Joe Milton or Tyler Braid?
That would be a good marketing campaign.
The problem is they would both miss their target. Like Tyler missed his target throwing the beer bottle. And
all right, let me do. I do want to play off something that Caleb said earlier. So it's not Tennessee necessarily promoting them, but do you think that Joe Milton is getting too much love before he's really proven himself? Would that be a concern in your mind if you're Josh Heupel or you're anybody in the program?
Well, let me ask you this: too much love from whom? Like from
the media, clear the outside sources.
Okay. No, because I think a lot of what I see is that Joe is on that needs to prove it list this year. I'm not seeing as much first round mock draft talk as I expected, honestly, because what I'm seeing a lot of is he's one of those players that if he has a really good year, then he can jump up into that conversation, which I think is totally fair. A year ago, Todd McShay put Anthony Richardson in his top 10 in his mock draft, which actually ended up being true. So he got it right. But at the time, Richardson still had a ton to prove. So Joe is more appropriately placed, I think, in a lot of these lists. National media, I think, are looking at Joe and the offense and putting those together and saying, hey, his talent, and he was the MVP of the Orange Bowl, and that's just one game, and it's a bowl game where we do have to be careful. But if we hadn't seen him at all at the end of last season and we were going on mop-up duty in 2021, then I would probably be sitting here saying, let's be slow here. We need to see him be a starter again. But we've seen it in a small sample size. But he looked like he was improving, coming in as a backup for Hendon Hooker later in games. And then we saw him in the game against Clemson be better than he was in 2021. So that combined with knowing Josh Heupel's offense has so much potential, I think makes Joe Milton an obvious candidate to talk about a guy that could make a leap. But, like in media days, I don't know that Joe's going to be all SEC. He might, but he has to contend with Jaden Daniels, who I'm confident will be all SEC. Mm-hmm. Rattler's getting a good amount of attention at South Carolina, and he still has a lot to prove. Carson Beck might get a ton of attention if there's that kind of confidence that he'll be Georgia's guy. So it's a league that has to replace a lot of QBs. So Joe Milton, I think, naturally gets more attention because of the offense that he's in.
Be interesting to see who gets more votes, Carson Beck or Joe Milton.
Yeah, my guess is Milton, by the way. But I mean, it's that Georgia's going to win, so you just take that quarterback position. And if Beck were named the starter, then maybe it's different here. But even though he's expected to be, there is still technically the battle going on between Beck and Vandegrift.
Josh, keep up the great work. Noon to 3 on the Sports Animal in Knoxville. Appreciate you, man.
You got it. Thanks a lot, guys.
Thank you, Josh.
Have a good one, Josh.
Was told to me early, Caleb, about Joe Milton, because somebody said, and actually was a South Carolina fan, I believe, said Joe Milton doesn't seem like the type of guy that would read his press clippings. What I was told even before spring camp is, this was in January, is when Nico showed up that there was enough of a factor that if Joe was the type that would read his press clippings, he was not going to let that get in the way. That there was enough of a, I could slip up and lose this thing, and that he responded. Not that he needed to. I don't want to make that sound wrong, Caleb, but there was enough of that where he said, I got to be a 10 out of 10 every day from a work ethic standpoint.
Yeah, and that showed in the spring because Joe really worked to not – you could tell Joe had a determination in spring practice to not lose that starting job, and he didn't. Now, the question becomes, because it seemed that Joe really cemented that spot in the spring, you wonder if, I don't want to quote Nick Saban, but when he talks about the human condition is to survive, not thrive, you wonder if Joe Milton is the type of guy that can still have the same drive to stay ahead of Nico after he cemented himself in the starting job, because it's hard to keep that mentality. But yeah, I think losing his job to Hooker, I know he doesn't like to say it, but he still lost his starting job to Hendon Hooker. I think there's some things like that humbled him a little bit, that made him, I don't want to say he was cocky or arrogant, but I think kind of put him on alert. I think, by the way, Tennessee should send to New York the person that they think has the best chance of being Taylor Swift's next boyfriend, whenever that is. But,
How old is she? She's getting up there, isn't she?
That is true, actually. She's like 33, 30. She's 30.
Gosh. Like an elderly person. By the way, I hated that Tina Turner passed away. Let's talk about somebody. If I made a short list of people I'd like to see live, she would be on that. Portions of the program.
She lived in Knoxville for a minute. Born right outside of Memphis, but lived in Knoxville for a couple of years.
I didn't know that. Portions of the program brought to you by Vassy Lawn and Garden. Vassy Lawn and Garden, go to vassy.com. Before we talk about Tennessee recruiting, I want to remind you that when it's industrial mowers or commercial mowers, that Vassy Lawn and Garden will take care of you. Worth the drive to Cleveland, Tennessee. Man alive, it's worth the drive. Toro, count on it. So Tennessee is where, in terms of location, as it would affect recruiting, because there's a 247 column out that's a little bit stating the obvious, but there are a lot of states that have better recruiting than the state of Tennessee. Who are they, Caleb Calhoun?
So according to 247, the states with the best recruiting, there are 10 states that are ahead of Tennessee, and unfortunately for Tennessee, a lot of them are in the SEC. Tied for 10th are Illinois, South Carolina, and believe it or not, Connecticut. Yeah, Connecticut.
Okay.
Tied for 7th, North Carolina, Louisiana, Mississippi. By the way, these are the states with the most prospects in the latest 247 sports rankings. Tied for 7th is North Carolina, Louisiana, and Mississippi. 6th is Ohio.
So they're citing themselves.
Yes, they are citing themselves. They are. But you have to remember,
I would rather see this list based off NFL players, wouldn't you?
Oh, we can go to that list too, though. We can pull that up on Pro Football Reference. States with the most NFL talent.
Okay, let me see that. Okay, and let's pull that up, and I'll ask today's tough question now. Today's tough question. Hit it.
Today's tough question. Take a side. Take a stand. The Dave Hooker Show, a presentation of OffTheHookSports.com.
Because of their home state, is there a glass ceiling for the Vols? Can they only get so high because they don't have an Atlanta area in their backyard? They don't have a Dade County in South Florida to recruit from. They don't have high school football in Texas. They don't even have the type of athletes that come out of SoCal. So is there a glass ceiling with Tennessee in terms of recruiting and what they can do no matter who their coach is? Caleb, yes or no?
No, there used to be. There used to be. And the used to be was pre-NIL. And we're going to talk about this later in the show, too, on whether or not Tennessee should start demanding more revenue. But right now, no. The reason I say there used to be, the glass ceiling was Tennessee needed a bunch of other programs to be down for them to be at their peak. And the data bears that out. Guys, if you can dispute me all you want, but since college football, since the SEC fully integrated, which was give or take 1970, right, Dave? Right around 1970?
I think 72, yeah.
1972. Since the SEC is fully integrated 50 years ago, Tennessee has one national championship. They only have 2 outright SEC championships during that time. So people think it's just the past 20 years. No, they were down for a long time before Majors got that program rolling in the mid to late 80s.
Well, you're saying there's not a glass ceiling, though.
I'm saying there's not one now. I'm saying there used to be. There used to be.
Okay.
And it was borne out in fact that there used to be. Tennessee didn't become that golden age of the 90s and 2000s. That was solely due to Georgia hiring bad coach after bad coach after bad coach. Otherwise, that 90s run doesn't happen. Sorry, y'all can dispute me on that, but that's why Tennessee was ahead of Georgia during that time.
Okay, I don't think there's a glass ceiling, but for a far different reason. I think that you have to have either an elite recruiter or maybe in this case NIL. So I don't think there's a glass ceiling because you can recruit places like Atlanta. You can recruit places like the Carolinas. You and I have gone back and forth on Nashville a little bit. I do think eventually that will produce a good amount of talent. It hasn't historically. And you have a lot of guys that are from all over the place because Nashville's kind of turning into a mini Atlanta. But I think eventually that you're going to see some pretty good players come out of the Nashville area. And, there's Beasley would be one. Jalen Ramsey was another. I think that you're going to see that. But the reason that I think that if there's a glass ceiling at all is because there's only so many uber elite recruiters. And I consider Philip Fulmer to be one of those. And there was a great story that we'll talk about on the Celebrate 98 series. It's going to have Sean Ellis, but I was visiting with Dion Grant about the Celebrate 98 series. And Philip Fulmer was the only person that would go into his home, the only head coach that went into his home because it was in the projects. So you have to have somebody that is that dedicated to recruiting. Where on the flip side, Derek Dooley didn't go to one high school football game his entire time at Tennessee. So you have to have that guy that's uber recruiting or have this NIL in place, one or the other. So I don't think there's a glass ceiling because I think Tennessee, obviously they won the national championship in 98, very well could have won it in 99, could have played for it in 2001. That'd be a heck of a 3-year run, right? If you played for 3, won 1 or 2 and 3. So I think it's proven that there's not a glass ceiling. You just have to have an elite recruiter or take advantage of NIL because the funds you have, one of the two.
You have to take advantage of NIL. Dave, I got to be honest with you. I think in the 90s, there were elite recruiters were at a premium. I think there's a lot more now. And because let's call it what it is with recruiting. Basically what you just said about Fulmer. Recruiting is about your drive more than it is your ability. It's about how committed are you to recruiting. Am I right about that? It's how dedicated are you to it?
Yes. And it's easier now too with cell phones and social media.
Exactly.
Remember, if you couldn't get a guy on the phone in 1995 because he didn't have a cell phone, you had to call his head coach. You had to run him down through maybe an intermediary or a parent. I mean, so I don't think it's as hard of a job now as it was back when Philip did it.
Right. And so recruiting is more about dedication than it is actual skill. And there's a lot of dedicated recruiters now. I mean, look, let's be fair. Jeremy Pruitt was a dedicated recruiter. He was a dedicated recruiter. Just wasn't the best coach. But Jeremy Pruitt also had another part to his game, which helped a lot, which he was a great talent evaluator. I'll say this. The best talent evaluator of any coach post Philip Fulmer was Jeremy Pruitt, and he may have been a better evaluator than Fulmer was. I would say one of the things he mentioned, though, I don't know if you know this, Pruitt didn't even try for Nashville that much. He said, he told a guy I know in Atlanta, a guy who runs a podcast in Atlanta off camera one time, he said, the only place where I can get elite talent in Tennessee is Memphis, and I have to compete with a bunch of other schools from Memphis because that's not really a Tennessee pipeline.
No, it's not at all.
Yeah.
Might as well be Memphis, Mississippi, or Memphis, Arkansas.
Yeah. Ole Miss can compete with Tennessee for Memphis kids. Alabama competes with Tennessee for Memphis kids. So he openly said, he's like, that's the only place where you can get consistent elite talent in the state. And he basically said straight up, most in-state kids in Tennessee are really overrated. Most high school talent in Tennessee is overrated.
And in the message board, SC Scout guy, who's a South Carolina fan, said, I think Shane Beamer realizes exactly what I'm saying. He is constantly in recruits' homes and at their games. This has the highest social media interactions of any coach in D1, according to 247. True. And who was he a GA under? Philip Fulmer.
Also,
I think it's something to be concerned about. And that's why we brought up the Beamer versus Heupel. And I would say this to any South Carolina fan. Would I take Heupel right now? Yes. Do I feel as confident as I did before the way South Carolina finished? No. But yeah, I think that Beamer is going to be that guy that maybe not, his coaching staff may not be elite, from an X's and O's standpoint, but he's going to beat the bushes in recruiting. It also helps that he's a little bit younger. And at some point, you can't beat the bushes quite like you used to.
Yeah, but watch out for one thing you said, SEC scout guy. You said he has the highest social media interactions. Do you guys know who the first SEC coach to really get out ahead of the curve and embrace social media was?
I don't think I do.
It was old Butch Jones, crew cut Butch Jones.
Oh, that's true. Yeah,
he was way out. He was heavily out on Twitter. How'd that work out for him? Because you still have to evaluate the talent and you still have to develop the talent. And Butch Jones couldn't do either of those things.
Well, but that doesn't mean it's a bad idea to do it. I mean, you ultimately, okay, like the Dooley thing, you have to be in front of the kids. Like the Fulmer thing, you have to be at their home. You have to do all that. But it doesn't hurt that your social media it's at most the icing on the top of the cake, right?
It's to use the Dooley phrase, it's the hot sauce. Yes. But Lane Kiffin is very active in social media, not really helping him recruit at Ole Miss.
No, they're all transferred NIL guys, no question about it. But 2 minutes, why Vanderbilt doesn't deserve any money. How about that? He's Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker, Off the Hook Sports.
And Craving Wings South North Shore location, where we've heard people say that you can get the best wings in East Tennessee. Pero ¿quién es este? El número 87, Jacob Warren.
I'll just do 6 of my sauce 87, please.
Imposible, señorita. Dale 6 más. Look at these wings. Perfectas, deliciosas, fantásticas.
Man, I don't know what you're saying, but it sounds awesome. How do you say fresh, never frozen in Spanish?
Frescas, nunca congeladas. Make your way to Craving Wings and get you 6 más.
But what was funny about Cadis, we were a full continuum of care at that time. We had detox, we had inpatient, we had outpatient. So we were doing a lot of the things that we do now. But now we just do them so much better. It's really a simple program, but we're complicated people. I am what I am, and now I got to do something about it.
You can take your life back. Call Cadis today.
Got cataracts? We can fix that. Never miss another moment. With a little help from Doctors Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Hahn at cctis.com.
Do you want to own the more that owns every job? Then get to Vassey Lawn and Garden in Cleveland and get you a Toro. I'm David Vassey, here to talk to you about Toro. With a Toro Zero Turn, you'll get more out of every minute and you'll reach the finish line faster. At Vassey's, we like to say, no matter if you're mowing 3 acres a week or 11 lawns a day, homeowners and business owners alike find confidence in equipment they can trust from top to bottom.
Vassey Lawn and Garden, Highway 60 North in Cleveland.
Man alive, it's worth the drive.
Our family has been creating jewelry since 1986, each piece unique with a story all its own. I'm Rick Terry with Rick Terry Jewelry Designs. I'm a jeweler, and I want to be your jeweler. We're grateful that you chose us to be Knoxville's best jeweler. My family and staff look forward to serving you. So please come see us. Kingston Pike and Campbell Station Road in the heart of Farragut and downtown on Gay Street, right next to the Tennessee Theater.
Who's this guy?
Hello, wizard.
The Dave Hooker Show, a presentation of Off the Hook Sports.
What?
YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the free Off the Hook Sports app. Back to Dave Hooker.
Couple of good message board moments. Tweet by tweet. Butch Jones's old saying, brick by brick. And then somebody, let me go back. All right, Smoky Mountain Red asked me, is Kiffin available for my next birthday party to play guitar? Yeah, I mean, I'll ask him, but the text back's going to be, what's the guy-to-girl ratio going to be? I mean, he's not going to show up with a bunch of dudes there.
And also, what's the guy? Well, wouldn't it be what's the guy to girl under 30 ratio? Sorry.
You said that, I didn't. So when he goes, Dave, can I talk to you for a second? At FCC Media Days. Caleb said it. It wasn't me. One other note.
Of age, by the way, of age. Okay, I'm talking like Leo DiCaprio style.
Yeah. Some weird R. Kelly thing going on.
Yeah.
All right. So the ACC has approved a merit-based revenue sharing. Okay, so let me tell you what this is going to do in the front end, then tell me if you like it on the message board. because this will destroy. Smoky Mountain Red said he can arrange that. He can arrange a strong female to male ratio. Good. And maybe I'll show up. So, by the way, it is my anniversary today. So,
oh, congratulations.
Yeah, pretty cool. Pretty cool. She's I outkicked my coverage. I'm the Dustin Colquitt of husbands. So, 3 years. No, 27. But all right, so here we go. This will destroy college football as you know it, but I think it will make it better. And that is the ACC has approved a merit-based distribution of funds. In other words, you do better in the athletics departments, then you're going to get more cash. Sounds like a big, huge mess, and it probably is. But here's how it will destroy college football and athletics as you know it, which might not be a bad thing, because the smaller schools that don't get as much money are already behind, because then they would get less money, so they're going to fall further behind. It's exactly like small market teams in Major League Baseball. They fall further behind while the Yankees sign a new contract with the YES Network. So if this happens, you are definitely going to see a super conference, and I'm all for it in both the ACC and the SEC, because does Vanderbilt bring as much to the table as Alabama or Georgia or South Carolina or Florida? Absolutely not. And we can talk all day about how they bring academic integrity. I don't give two flips. At the end of the day, I think that this will happen maybe at the ACC, and it will grease the wheels towards a separate super conference. So the ACC, as Smoky Mountain Red pointed out, grasping at straws. Yes, they are. They're trying to save their conference. But in reality, it's like when I sat down with Roy Kramer in 2000. And I said, do you realize what you've created with the BCS would set up a playoff because you're seeding teams? And he goes, no. I was like, okay, but no, you are. I mean, that's what you're doing. You're seeding teams. And so this is they don't mean for it to do this, but this will grease the wheels for them to fall apart anyway, and could grease the wheels for a super conference if other conferences adopt it. Thoughts, Caleb?
Yes, but other conferences are not going to adopt this. And I will tell you.
So. I don't think so.
Because the Big 12 adopted this with Texas. It nearly destroyed them. The ACC is doing this. Here's what's happening. The ACC is doing this so they can stay in business through 2036. This way, and Florida State and Clemson and all those other schools are saying, okay, this is enough to keep us afloat until we can finally leave in 2036. This is what this is about. And so this brings, my assumption is this brings a certain level of stability back to the conference until 2036 when the whole thing dissolves. The SEC would never do this, nor would the Big Ten ever do this, because revenue sharing is essential to the conference's surviving. So you are going to have a super conference. I'm with you eventually. I think you'll have like SEC and Big Ten be AL and NL, and then an overall conglomerate league. They're going to bring all those teams with them. So Vanderbilt's coming. Here's what I think they might do, though, Dave, and this is what I think would be a great idea. Have a super conference. Treat the lesser teams. Do what FIFA does with the Premier League.
Relegate?
Yeah, relegate. Where the bottom.
I know that from Ted Lasso. I don't watch any soccer because I'm American.
Yeah, so okay, you have a conference of 50 teams, and then you have a lower conference of 50 teams, and or maybe 40 teams, I don't know. But the bottom 3 fall out and the top 3 come in. And that's just how it happens. And
but you would never be able to get back.
The top 3 teams in the bottom go in every year, and the bottom 3 teams in the top fall out every year.
Yeah, but if you got less money, you're not going to have the same facilities or NIL support or anything else. You would never, if you dropped out. Yeah, drop it, Mizzou. Amen to that. But if you drop a team, they would never make a comeback. And see, the reason that works.
They could come back in. The teams at the bottom are bound to come back into the top at some point, because somebody in the bottom half has to go into the top half every year.
Yeah, but at least in soccer, you can spend more money. I mean, I don't see how that works. But I think those bottom teams would continue to be the bottom teams forever, and you might rotate them in. Yeah, I mean, I think Wake would drop out of the ACC, and forever be out of the ACC. I think they would be the big pile of wake.
So what you're saying is even if they rotated and came into the bigger conference, they would be at the bottom of the bigger conference, so it really wouldn't matter.
Yeah, they might rotate in. I tell you, too, where if I'm an SEC fan, this perks up my ears. Because if the ACC does this or does what you're talking about with relegating, and they somehow have their bottom half is even lower than it is now, and it's pretty low already. The bottom half of the ACC is pretty bad. So if it's even worse, and literally you're playing second stringers in the second quarter versus a conference opponent 4 or 5 times a season, then SEC fans, you got a major gripe if an ACC team like Clemson gets in and a second team, like let's say Alabama or Tennessee last year, didn't get in. That to me is that throws off even the playoff picture. Or you want to talk about the 13th team. If you want to talk about that 12th or 13th team when you have the playoff next year, man, the ACC is already bad enough. Do they deserve a seat at the table if their conference gets worse?
Well, this is something Josh Pate brought up, which is if college football is somewhat evenly spread out like it used to be, it's okay to have these conference championship automatic bids, but it's laughable to have the top 6 conference champions get automatic bids now because there were two. First of all, as Pate points out, if you're a top 6 if you're a conference champion and you can't be in the top 12, how in the world do you deserve to be in the playoff at that point? If the 5th and 6th best conference champions can't be a top 12 team in college football, who thinks that conference champion is going to be able to go play Alabama, who may finish 11-1 and just miss out on the SEC title? A lot of people kept thinking this 12-team playoff was going to give these smaller schools a seat at the table. No, it's not. It's going to expose the haves and have-nots of college football more than ever before. Because
it completely is. You're right.
Yeah, because I'm sorry, when Alabama plays, okay, who won the group of 5? Who was the best group of 5 team this past year? Like, who won the American? I don't even know. Like, say Navy wins the American one year, which happens. Alabama plays Navy. Navy gets the automatic bid. Does anybody think that's a game?
No. And NIL is already growing the disparity. If nothing else changes, if none of these theoretical things that we're talking about changes, then it doesn't matter. NIL is going to continue to separate the haves and have-nots. Wow, Mr. Jones, you stole my line. It's only delaying the inevitable. It is. Doing these things might delay the inevitable, but the inevitable is that you're going to have a super conference. Now, I know we had a post that said, why not have conferences based off regionality? And I agree that was cool and that's classic. And that's the way probably college football should be, but it's not going to be. And I'm okay with seeing a team play 12 significant opponents a year and a 9-3 gets them in a playoff. Caleb, I'm okay with not seeing the UTEPs of the world and the Akrons of the world. Maybe it's because I had to cover so many of those games. But if you have a super conference, you're playing somebody pretty good every year or every week, excuse me.
Yeah. So by the way, there are going to be regional conferences. This is how this is going to go, guys. The SEC and the Big Ten are going to gobble up so many teams. They're going to make conferences within their super conference, and they're going to organize them regionally. And that's going to create it. It won't be perfect. Some rivalries will go by the wayside, but there will be new rivalries created. So if the SEC takes 30 teams, they'll have 3 10-team conferences based on regions at that point. And so it's not going to be that big of a deal. I think, honestly, here's my radical take, Dave, and I think Tennessee should get out ahead of the curve on this. I think Notre Dame, where they're one step ahead of everybody, they're behind in a lot of ways, but staying independent. I know the SEC ties and loyalty is a thing, but given the fact that you can negotiate your own TV deals, honestly, I think the SEC holds Tennessee back.
So they're kind of like the Yankees with the Yes Network.
Exactly.
Interesting.
I think Tennessee should. I think they're holding themselves back, splitting revenue with these other SEC schools like Vanderbilt and Missouri. I do.
It's interesting. Elias says once we started emphasizing the national title over everything else, this became the inevitable route. It's true.
Yeah. Does anybody think
I don't dislike it. I'm not afraid of change. I'm not afraid of having a quality opponent every single week and a 12-team playoff.
Does anybody think college football is more exciting now than it was in 1990 when you had it all spread out and Colorado and Georgia Tech shared the national title?
Do I think it's more? Yeah, I think it's much more exciting now. I hated debating that back in the day. I hated that? Did you not hate that?
Well, in 1990, I was too young. But I mean, I thought one of the most exciting ones was like, okay, the reason it was so college football, I don't want it to go the route of college basketball. I don't want so college basketball. Nobody cares about college basketball until March. They sacrifice 3 months for 3 weeks. I don't want college football to do that.
No, it won't. It won't, because the NFL has proven that to us. It's important to continue to play for a bye. It's important to continue to play for home field advantage. But if you're playing 12 quality opponents every year and you finish 9-3, then that's worthy in a super conference of, say, 48 teams. That's worthy of making a 12-team playoff. Probably a 9-3 team or a 10-2 team is going to make it, right? And I'm cool with that. The thing that the scariest thing about the playoff is that right now you have a top end. It was Alabama and now it's Georgia, and probably both of them to some extent. You have a top end who are going to beat the bejesus out of the first team they play. And that's kind of boring. We were fortunate that didn't happen this past year, and maybe those days are over. That's the only downfall I see, is having like the way they're doing the buys. I love it, because if you had one play 12 and two play 11, they would just beat the dog stuffing out of them. That wouldn't be any fun to watch at all. So I like the way the first four teams have a bye. I like everything about it. I mean, I consider myself a traditionalist, but in this regard, I guess I'm exactly the opposite.
Here's the problem with the teams at the bye. 5 is going to play 12. 5 might just very well be the third best team in the nation, but they didn't win conference technically. So, and then 12 will be a group of 5 champion. So 5 and 12 is going to be a gigantic blowout anyway. This isn't going to be March Madness, guys. This isn't going to be, you're not going to be see a bunch of 16 seeds upset 1 seeds or whatever.
Well, but that's Cindy Crawford's mole. You know, that's one little bitty thing. She's still super hot. And I think the college football playoff is super smoking hot.
We'll see.
I'll take that little mole that you pointed out.
My issue is that now here's where it would be exciting. Okay, say you take the top 48 teams. If they then separated, say, okay, top 48 teams, you separated and you had like 4 12-team conferences out of that. You know, they organized the conference, and then they were like, whoever wins these conferences they'll play conference championship games. You'll get the first round buys, those 4 teams. Because then there is always something to play for. I like the idea of many conferences within conferences. Until they organize to create their own conference, I'm sorry. I think Tennessee should consider. I think Tennessee would have been smart years ago to consider going independent. Even when they were bad, they were probably one of the top revenue producers in the SEC. They've always been in the top half.
It's a lot of cash to turn down.
I
don't know about independent. I don't know that you could do that in reverse, but
one of the things that hurt Tennessee.
Did Tennessee go independent?
You want to know what really hurt Tennessee, Dave, in the 2000s that no one talks about? One of the underrated things, the SEC's TV deals. When the SEC started bringing in all that money and splitting it evenly, a bunch of schools caught up with Tennessee's recruiting budget after that. When Tennessee had the financial recruiting advantage over every school in the 90s, that was a huge deal. And then they had to split that revenue with everybody in the 2000s.
It's gold, Jerry. Gold. Moly, moly, mole. Yeah, I watched Austin Powers recently, too. And the reason I thought about Cindy Crawford is, you know who she kicks it with on a regular basis? Who they refer to each other as like brother and sister. This will surprise you.
Who?
Kid Rock. Can you imagine those two kicking it? That's strange. We leave you on that note. Support our fine advertisers. He's Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker. Cindy Crawford. Didn't have time for her today, but we'll try to work her into the show tomorrow.